Good morning. We're going to get started. We have a full hour, and we're going to do it now in 55 minutes because we want to make sure that we get you all out of here on time as promised to your busy days. In your packet, you will have some materials. In the folder, you will see that there is an agenda, so you can follow along this morning. There is also a summary of the data on some of our key indicators, and then you will also find a poem that I'm going to just begin our morning with. I think it sets the stage very nicely, and it's very eloquently written by one of the fathers of a youth who is enrolled in CFP, and it talks a little bit about what their experience is. One piece at a time. That's better. Life is like a puzzle. It takes one piece at a time. You struggle day by day putting pieces together, one piece at a time. When you finally get halfway done with your puzzle that you struggled so hard to put together, one piece at a time, then someone comes along and messes up your puzzle that you have been working very hard putting together, one piece at a time. You start over, one piece at a time. When you struggle and work very hard to put the last piece of your puzzle together, one piece at a time, someone comes along and messes it up again. You start over again, one piece at a time. The ones that can relate are the ones that have been there, putting their puzzle together, one piece at a time. And this is a nod, like I said, from a parent. I really believe to the parent who is working with them. The value of parents in our community and joining us in our work has become really invaluable. So I thank him for sharing those words with us. That was from Tom Bardot. Again, I welcome you. I thank you for coming. We are in the 6th year, and in the 6th month of that 6 years, in our grant fiscal cycle, and we have accomplished a lot of work. And fortunately, we have also collected a lot of data. And as we collect more data, we can make decisions with greater confidence, knowing that what we continue to go forward doing makes sense. It produces the outcomes that we're looking for, and it also allows us the efficiencies, cross systems, to better allocate our dollars where we want them. And I know that we're all trying to move towards bringing those dollars out of those institutional budget lines and putting them back into the community and keep moving them forward towards prevention so that we can touch more youth earlier and save them from those more intensive and traumatizing at times experiences. So again, I thank you. I thank you for your commitment. The report that we are going to hear today from the Community Research Institute, from Amber, will share the journey and the reflections. It is going to talk to us a little bit about what we hypothesized at that very beginning. Does it support what we believe? Does it support the values that we put out there? Does it support if we do a new way of business with our most vulnerable youth, kids with severe emotional disturbances, can we safely treat them long-term in the community and no longer need to rely on sending them out to get improved outcomes? I just want to do a really very brief moment of acknowledging some people who are in our audience today. Jane Johnson, would you like to introduce a couple of the folks that have so willingly and wonderfully supported parents?
I want to take a special moment to thank a few people here today. Unfortunately, Carol Hennessy, our representative from Kent County, isn't here, but Adam Erber is here from Senator Hildebrand's office, and he has been diligently, side by side, walking with us parents to make some definite changes here in the state of Michigan by helping us get wraparound here and parent support partners here, and always is constantly asking us at PAC, the Parent Advocacy Council here in Kent County, what our opinions are as parents. Where do we think the move is going, and what kind of feedback that we need to have back at the representative office. And Adam has been wonderful at pointing us in the right direction, talking to us and getting back, working with us with Network 180. with our lovely chair. And so I really just want to introduce him, stand up, and give him applause for all the work he's done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Your office's contributions to the Parent Advocacy Council has been significant, and I think it has really empowered them and given them great confidence to step forward. And so we thank you very much for listening to their voice and to coming and showing your support for their voice today.
Thank you for having me. I apologize, Senator Hildenbrand couldn't be here in person. He is in session right now, but him sending me is his position of support, and
Wonderful.
he's the chairman of appropriations currently, so it's a struggle for funding, but he will have your back.
Wonderful. Thank you. Can we have that in writing? No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I need to wrap up, but I also wanted to acknowledge we have a couple Network 180 board members in the room, and we would just like you to stand, and we wanted to thank you, Stan Steck and Nelson Gritt. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and for your support. This is off the record, but I am astounded by the number of youth and the number of parents that we have in the room today. And I think that it's really important that you have an opportunity to lay eyes on people who have had the opportunity to engage in this approach and who are here to support that approach today. Parents and youth, would you stand up, please? And family members. I know we have some family members too. So thank you very much. I'm going to now hand it over somewhat virtually to Kim Batchke-McKenzie. We had invited her to come and to hear about our outcomes, and she very nicely offered to tape a message because she was not able to come with us today. So Kim Batchke-McKenzie works for Michigan Department of Community Health, and she is the program manager for Youth and Family Services.
Hi, my name is Kim Batchke-McKenzie, and I'm the Manager of Programs for Children with Serious Emotional Disturbance. I work closely with Sherry Falvey in the Division of Services to Children and Families at the Department of Community Health. I apologize I can't be at your stakeholders event in person, but I want to make sure that you all knew that the Department of Community Health supports the system of care efforts of the Community Family Partnership. CFP exemplifies the values of system of care that we strive to model at a state and national level. We've been very busy at a state level with much planning following the mental health and wellness recommendations and priorities. Many of these priorities support cross-system youth with serious emotional disturbance who are involved in juvenile justice or child welfare. As a result of these recommendations, we've been able to continue our mental health first aid efforts until the end of this fiscal year and begin the Children's Behavioral Action Team project, which has recently been awarded to the Guidance Center. This CBAC team, as we affectionately call it, will work closely with Hawthorne and local communities to stabilize youth in their home communities rather than having to remain at Hawthorne or return to Hawthorne multiple times. Another exciting activity at DCH is in the area of peer supports for children and families. As you know, Parent Support Partner is a state-planned peer-delivered service for parents of children in the public mental health system. We are close to being able to offer similar Medicaid service for youth called Youth Peer Support. There's a changing landscape at the state as well with the merging of the Department of Community Health and the Department of Human Services officially on April 10th, which we will then become the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. There's extensive planning ongoing, however, the details of the new department are not yet public. What we do know is that children are a priority population. We also know that our current partnership activities with the Department of Human Services, such as the STD waiver and the DHS incentive payment, have laid a strong groundwork and foundation already that will carry us forward into the new organization. We want to recognize the use of wraparound as your community's vehicle of choice to support multiple systems in working together to assure that youth who are most vulnerable and who have not been historically achieved their outcomes are now coming together. Keep up the great work. We're very proud of your collaborative work with children and families.
we would thank them were they here, and we will make sure that we definitely follow up with their appreciation for their words of encouragement. I'm going to hand off now to Kathy Freeberg, who is the Planning Director of Children's Services at Network 180. She is part of what we call a sustainability team with our partners at the county, Department of Human Services, and the Juvenile Court to do this work together. And so she's just going to share a few words about her observations in the mental health field, and juvenile justice and DHS will follow up with that, and then we will get right into the data. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm not sure I can follow all that. I didn't write a poem, nor did I bring my parents with me, which I think would have been lovely because then I would have felt all secure. I just want to say, you know, how we've gotten here. So this has been a long journey, and my heart is overflowing with the data that you're going to see today. My heart is overflowing, as Terry said, with the youth that are here, with the parents that are here. 4 years ago, there were no parent support partners. There was no wraparound model. We didn't have staff employed. We just started meeting with the court, Department of Human Services, ourselves, KSSN, educational system, and the county administrative. So we've been doing this work and planning behind the scenes twice a month, getting together, talking about children, looking at the data, trying to figure out where some intersections of our worlds can meet. So as Terry said, this is a system of care, and the system of care with parents leading the way, with youth leading their voice in this work, has also pushed those of us who are in administrative positions to think really, really differently about how we design services. So the system of care, everyone who's here today, it's really much, much bigger than just the people you see in this room. So I need to also give acknowledgement to other people that are involved in children's services in our community: Arbor Circle, Wedgwood, Family Outreach Center, Bethany Christian Services, DAB St. John, Spectrum. All those people are also behind the scenes, and they're basically trying to figure out how to support, how to have clinical services in place, and to figure out our whole continuum on a system of care. There's also, because of this work, there's also lots of other initiatives that have come forth from this data. As Jane talked about having a right arm with a parent advocacy group, we now have a youth advocacy group. And in the next year, we're hoping to have a billable service for our youth specialist. That's nowhere. That hasn't been in Michigan. We're the first to be starting all that with some of our staff. So you can see we're in a really exciting time. On the same front, as everyone knows, in this exciting time, we are also pushed forward with the fact that funding is limited, which we are so happy that we have Senator Hildebrand's representation here. We basically, you know, have had dollars available, and those are kind of streaming down a little bit. So this work of a system of care, the principles that it's taught us, even in a financial data way, means that we can combine different budgets together to still deliver the same service. So we have a partnership with the county. The county might have a little extra dollars. They're really interested in keeping children in the community and not sending them out of county for placement for residential. They might put a few bucks in the pot. The Department of Human Services is very interested in these services that we offer and how we can join together to serve the same kids. They put a little bit of money in the pot. We get some incentive dollars to support this work. But I just want to say that none of this is possible without any of you in this room. And from whatever avenue or whatever peer or whatever perch you sit at, your voice is really, really important. And without the voices of everyone here to keep moving us forward in a system of care, it won't happen. So I just want to say congratulations to everyone here today. And I also want to say how much we appreciate your support. And in any way that you can give it, we are always welcome to hear your voice. Thanks.
Although he probably doesn't need much introduction, Mr. Chris Burgess. No, Chris Burgess has been working with Community Family Partnership from the very beginning. He is the court representation on the Community Family, or the community team that authorizes youth into services. He is reviewing wraparound plans. He is making financial decisions on behalf of discretionary dollars. He is very key to the work that we've been doing, and so we're real happy to have him here this morning. That was really sincere.
That was a lot of glossing, I think. Briefly, from the court's perspective, and Mr. Vogel could not be here today, who would normally do this, but I sit on a couple of committees as a representative from the court with CFP. Service integration, how we look at the processes and protocols for how we implement the CFP and RAP services into what we do at the court, and then also as part of the community team, where we evaluate youth that come in and are referred to CFP, and then whether or not they're going to be appropriate and what direction that they end up going. And both of those have been a really good example of working with service partners, a network of people who are all on the same page as far as helping kids and youth and families in this community. So it's been a great experience so far. A couple of things from the court. I think it's been about 4 years since I've been sitting on the committees, but in that time we've had over 150 kids that have been involved with the juvenile court that have had wraparound services in place. That's a significant number from what we see. Also, our probation staff work closely with the wraparound teams, are often a part of those wraparound teams. They've also made referrals for wraparound to the tune of, I think it's between 80 and 90 to today's date, referrals coming from the juvenile court and probation staff. So it's a significant number of kids that are involved in these multiple systems. As you know, kids that are involved in probation often are involved in other systems, whether that be special education or the mental health services as well. So going forward, I think what we're most excited about is there's basically 3 outcomes that we really would like to see, and one is reducing recidivism. One is finding the support for families, helping them to find supports within their own family systems or within their own communities, how to find resources. And then thirdly, building skills along the way as well. And our probation staff has been key in being a part of that. RAP coordinators have been a key in being part of that. Families, thank you for involvement. The youth that are here, keep working, guys. You guys are doing great work with this stuff. You got great people around you too. So, yeah, I think that about covers it. So thank you for your support, everybody here, for your part in this. We're excited going forward. Since 2010, we've cut our out-of-home placements by about half. Part of that is in part to what we're seeing through wraparound and what we're doing in the community. So thank you. And I think I need to introduce Kelly. Kelly Arredondo is here from DHS, and she will give a brief update from them.
Thank you, and I don't do well in front of mics, so I'll stay off to the side. Savita Selden-Johnson, who is our DHS director, is unable to be here today, so she asked me to just come and say a few words. I've been with the department a long time. I won't say the number of years, but have seen things come and go. We've seen numerous services, we've seen numerous initiatives, and we've had great partnerships with our community, specifically our Network 180, Community Mental Health. We share the same families, and for years we've worked together. We've talked about what can we do with these kids, what can we do, what services can we put in. Frustration, there's a lot of frustration because of the challenges that our families exhibit, that our kids exhibit, but it's great that we can come together as a community and just partner. Kent County has really been known for our collaboration, our wealth of resources, our innovation, and we continue that. And it's been exciting with CFP and the increased partnership over the last few years. We've seen the increase of, or the initiation, not initiative, the implementation of wraparound parent support partners, and specifically, we have a Network 180 liaison in our office, which has been an excellent resource for us. And when individuals come to me and say, I don't know what to do with this client, I say, did you call Aben? Did you talk to Aben? What resources can Aben give? And then I'll go to Aben and say, okay, Aben, make your magic. I really need some help here. We really need some help to maintain kids in their families. And if they have to be removed, what resources can we put with the children, the families, in order to have better outcomes for them and reach that permanency. So it has been great. We refer a lot of our clients that we work with on the CPS side to our wraparound parent support partners. And actually we have said, we really want every ongoing case that we're working with to have a wraparound coordinator if possible, if they meet that criteria. It has been great to see this evolve. It's great to see our families at the tables, to see our youth have a voice. I remember quite a few years ago when I was working with youth, one of the youth said to me, Kelly, I feel like an old puppy in a store that everybody comes in and they just want that, or an old dog. They come in and they want the new puppy and they don't want me. And I know I look really bad on paper, but I'm really not bad. And it's just, that continued support that we give them. And we listen to their voice because they are the experts of their life. The families are the experts on what they need for them, and so we need to continue to have them at the table and to listen to really what they want and what they need. We still struggle with removals, and on our CPS side, this last year has been a real struggle. We had our highest removal numbers, and we had 514, I believe, that we removed, and we investigate about 600 a month investigations. So we're really struggling, but it's really nice to know that we've got partners at the table. We've got our mental health providers that can actually bring in some additional resources, and we can start to really think outside the box, and we can not do our cookie cutter social work. With that, I would like to say thank you for inviting us, and thank you for being at the table continuously. It's great to be a partner in the community.
Thank you very much. Wonderful words, I think great testaments to the changes that we're seeing. And so my words of encouragement is that we keep on keeping on. Amber is now going to come and share the hard data for us to take a closer look at what kind of impact are we making and where do we continue to move forward, maybe where we don't. Amber Erickson from Community Research Institute.
Is this mic working?
You have to go really close up to it.
Nope. I have
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry.
That's just for the camera.
Hello? Yep. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Amber Erickson from the Community Research Institute, and I am part of the evaluation team for CFP. And our charge, as Terry explained, is to really collect a lot of data and see if CFP is achieving the outcomes that they aim to achieve. So I have a lot to share with you today. Our charge is really to collect a lot of data and assess the outcomes that CFP is hoping to achieve. And we really do that by following their logic model, following the 4 cornerstone approach, and looking at those really key indicators that are relevant to all system partners. Our evaluation is longitudinal, so we are looking at change over time. We collect data when families are coming into CFP, and also every 6 months up to 2 years. And we collect a lot of data, a lot of different data. We have our wraparound coordinators and parent support partners helping with collecting data. We get data from our system partners, and the bulk of our data actually comes from evaluation interviewers going into families' homes and sitting down with youth and caregivers and conducting pretty extensive interviews, asking them about their experience. So a lot of what you will see is actually directly reported from caregivers and youth and what their experience has been. Today, I am going to kind of focus on two different areas. First, giving you a profile of what CFP families look like as they are coming into the system of care. And then also looking at some of those key outcomes and their change over time. So we have data from youth and families at 6 months and at 12 months, and kind of assessing that change over time. So first, looking at that sort of snapshot of families as they come into the system of care. We see a lot of the same patterns as we've seen in the past. Most of the youth are coming from the city of Grand Rapids. The CFP is a countywide effort. You can see, though, that majority from the city, and then with the rest kind of spread out throughout the county. We have youth being referred from all of our system partners. You can see there's a pretty good representation there. Just under half from the mental health system, but quite a few as well from juvenile justice and child welfare. System involvement at time of referral. So youth who come into CFP are all involved in at least two systems. So these are not mutually exclusive. And we can see here really that there are youth from a range of systems, a lot of different involvement. The majority of youth in CFP are already involved in mental health and special education of some sort when they enter the system. Presenting problems. So these, we're showing sort of the top three here of presenting problems for youth who are referred. And you can see that these are a majority of youth are presenting with these problems, with the highest being conduct delinquency related, hyperactive and attention related problems, and then school performance problems. And we have a breakdown by white youth versus youth of color here. There's some discrepancies, nothing too significant though. Child and family history. This is pretty important, and I think the numbers are rather striking in some ways that these families share pretty similar histories. We have a large majority of families who have a history of depression, other mental illness, family history of substance abuse. We have just under half of families reporting that their child has witnessed domestic violence or lived with someone who's been convicted of a crime. So it's important to know the history of the entire family, as one of CFP's main goals is to serve the family unit as a whole. Demographics. This pattern has been holding pretty steady for a while as far as how the youth are looking like. We have about 2/3 of youth who are male. The majority are in their teenage years from about 12 to 18, and the majority of youth are youth of color. Placement. So we've already heard a lot about placement. One of CFP's major goals is to keep youth in the community and divert them from institutional settings such as detention or residential placement. And that is important for this population because, as you see, 62% of youth who are enrolling into CFP have had an out-of-home placement even before they're coming into the system. The placement at the exact time of referral, you'll see that the majority are actually placed in the home, but pretty interesting here when we look at the breakdown of race ethnicity, we see that there is a little bit of a discrepancy here where there are more youth of color placed in foster care and detention and less youth of color placed in the home compared to white youth. Out of community placement. So when we are looking at the 90 days before before intake and before youth exit CFP services, and looking at if they spent time out of the community during those 90 days before those two time points, we see that before intake, 33% of youth spent time out of the community before coming into CFP. at exit, so when they are discharged from the system of care, that number is just about cut in half, where about 17% of youth spent time out of the community before exiting. Education, so CFP is also interested in looking at school attendance and performance with the idea that when some of these presenting problems are addressed, when youth are kept in the community, school performance and attendance will improve as a result. And so we do see some of that. When we're looking at youth school attendance and performance at 12 months, we see that from their last assessment that about 75% of youth remain stable or improved in both school attendance and performance. And CFP is also interested in disciplinary actions. So our youth, are they getting suspended? Are they getting expelled? What does that look like? And we have breakdowns at intake, 6 months and 12 months here. And you see from intake to 6 months, it holds about steady of just about half of youth that are not experiencing any disciplinary actions. But then when we get to that 12 mark point, there is a pretty notable increase of youth, about 64% who are not experiencing any disciplinary actions at all, not being suspended, not being expelled. Delinquency. So as again, you've heard, this is a very important topic for the Community Family Partnership. There are a lot of youth from the juvenile justice system who are in this system of care, and the indicators around criminal justice contact and recidivism are very important. And very relevant to this population because we see that about 62% of youth who are coming in to CFP report that they've had some sort of criminal justice history. And when you look at those different indicators there of the different kind of contact that might have had in the past, whether it's been questioned by the police, adjudicated, told to appear in court, or taken into custody, we see how that breaks down. And we also have that race ethnicity breakdown again because we saw some pretty interesting discrepancies there where youth of color, for all these indicators, were experiencing at double the rate or more. So another important discrepancy to keep an eye on. Criminal justice contact. So this, again, this is looking at the change over time for these different indicators. And we see overall, for each one of these indicators, from intake to 12 months, there is a decrease. So we see that less criminal justice contact overall and less recidivism as well. Natural supports. So again, this is a pretty key component of the system of care. Natural supports are those less formal supports, outside of systems that include things like having a strong network of family and friends that you can rely on. And in some of our past analyses, we've seen a relationship between increased natural supports, and increased youth functioning. So we know that this is a very important topic. We have both a caregiver perspective and youth perspective on how their natural supports, how they're experiencing natural supports over time. You can see caregiver perspective of natural supports from intake to 6 months to 12 months. We see mostly improvement over that time, definitely from intake to 12 months, an improvement in caregivers who say that they have people who listen and understand what they're going through, and they have people to do enjoyable things and so on. For youth, we look at what we're calling resiliency factors, and this is different components of that sort of a support system that a youth might have. And we're looking at from intake to exit, and we see that, again, an increase from intake to exit, where more youth reporting that they have these things when they leave CFP. Two sort of pretty notable increases that we're seeing here are youth saying that they have positive connections in the community, and youth who are saying that they have coping skills needed to manage stressful situations. Functioning. So this is a big topic that covers a lot of areas having to do with youth and caregiver emotional and behavioral outcomes. And we see a lot of positive outcomes here with some mixed results, some interesting points to make as well. So when we look at youth CAFAS scores, which is the Child and Adolescent Functioning Assessment Scale, which is looking at functioning for youth across different domains, school, emotions, etc. We're looking at total score here, where a decrease in score actually indicates greater functioning. So as we look at these different time points, we see mostly decreases, a little bump at 12 months, but sort of the important time point that we have here is exit. So when youth are leaving CFP, from intake to exit, youth, there's a decrease into 25 points, which is both a clinically significant decrease as well as statistically significant decrease. So youth leaving CFP are showing greater functioning. And this is an interesting way to look at the different subscales within CAFAS. So some of those subscales being school, home, community, behavior, etc. This is showing youth who have moderate to severe problems in these subscales, and the percentage at intake, and then the percentage at exit. So again, across almost all of these, except a slight bump in thinking, you're seeing decreases in those moderate to severe problems. Something to point out, though, is that in a handful of these subscales, you're still seeing youth, a majority of youth with some moderate to severe problems in those subscales. So when you look at school and home, behavior and mood, there's still a notable amount of youth that are experiencing some issues in these areas. Self-harm. So when we do our interviews with families, we are asking caregivers about whether their youth are reporting that they're talking about suicide or if they've attempted suicide. And we can see that we see decreases from intake to 12 months, which is a very important finding. Something we wanted to note, though, is that from the last biannual report, the last time about 6 months ago when we looked at this data, there's just actually more youth that are reporting these things, so the proportions are larger. It's positive we're seeing decreases, but we're seeing more youth that either have been talking about suicide or attempting suicide. Similarly, with substance use, we see for each one of these categories decreases over time. It's a very positive finding. But we also did notice that the proportion of youth who are reporting some type of substance use has increased since the last time we looked at this data. Caregiver strain. So this has been an interesting piece of information that we've reported on because it's actually asking caregivers, how are you experiencing working with your youth through what they're going through? And it's an important factor, again, because one of CFP's main values is treating the whole family unit. So we have 3 subscales here of caregiver strain on a 1 to 5 scale, with the higher number indicating greater strain, and then adding all of those up to create a global strain scale on a 1 to 15 point scale. So what we see here, again, positive findings in that caregiver strain decreases over time. From intake to 6 months to 12 months, there are decreases. We see the greatest decrease in objective strain, which is observable disruptions in family and community life. So the greatest improvement being made there. Subjective internalized strain, that's negative feelings that the caregiver experiences. So guilt, worry, that kind of thing. There are decreases there, but the scores are higher compared to the other subscales. So, as Terry said, we've been in this a long time. We've been collecting data for a long time, and we've been reporting on outcomes for a long time. But we are also interested in sort of looking at the data in a deeper way and trying to assess some of the relationships between all these different factors that we've been looking at. And so I want to share some of the significant findings we had around that. We found some pretty interesting results around placement. again, a placement being a very important factor of the system of care, keeping youth in the community. And what we found really seems to support that there is a risk associated with out-of-community placement. So we're seeing youth who are in an in-community setting at exit are almost 6 times as likely to have a 20% reduction in CAFIS score from intake to exit. So if they are in the community, we're seeing better functioning at that exit point. Youth who spend time out of the community in the 90 days before intake are half as likely to graduate from CFP. So graduation being sort of that successful discharge from CFP. You've achieved the outcomes you're hoping to achieve and so on. And then youth who have been taken into custody in the 6 months prior to intake are 3.5 times more likely to exit with an out-of-community placement. So some interesting relationship between that criminal justice contact and out-of-community placement. Factors related to functioning. So we, of course, want to know, youth seem to be improving on the whole. We're seeing good outcomes, but how and why is that happening? We don't have the entire answer to that, but we do have some interesting findings that we saw as factors related to functioning. So youth who reduce their CAFIS score by 20% or more between intake and exit are almost 4 times as likely to graduate from CFP. So that seems like a pretty straightforward finding, but what it does show is that youth, again, who have that successful discharge from the community family partnership are showing improved functioning. And then the higher the CAFIS score is at intake, so indicating lower functioning for the youth, the less the caregiver will improve their strain score. So we think this is really interesting because that, again, that is showing the need to support the whole family, and that youth's functioning is related to how their caregiver is feeling. And then outcome disparities. So this, we want to share this because, again, it's important to note these discrepancies. There's a lot of different factors that would go into outcomes like this, and we don't have the full answer yet, but it's a starting point for discussion. We're seeing that white youth reduce their CAFIS scores by about 27% on average, whereas youth of color are reducing their scores about by 16%. And then we're seeing that white youth are about 2 times as likely to graduate from CFP compared to youth of color. So again, this is just a starting point. There's a lot of different factors that would go into these findings. And then services and cost. So we've heard about funding, the importance of it, obviously, and a system of care's goal is always to reduce overall cost while producing good outcomes. So you're seeing the outcomes. You're seeing overall positive change from intake to 12 months. And we unfortunately don't have enough data yet to do a very comprehensive cost analysis, but we can give, again, some basic information to start to make that point that serving youth in the community, serving youth with mental health services and supports will reduce costs compared to out-of-community placement. So when we look at the average costs of CFP youth for their mental health services and supports, it's about $40 a day. When we look at the average cost per youth who are in a juvenile justice or child welfare residential placement, it's about $234 a day. On average, CFP youth are enrolled for about 256 days. So for that length of stay, that cost for that mental health services and supports is around $10,000. For the same length of stay in a residential placement, it would be about $60,000. So you can see there is a pretty clear potential for cost savings here. So that is the update on outcomes this time around, and we have a lot more investigation to do. There's a lot of data, and we want to explore the relationships that we have found more. We are continuing to collect data from youth and families, and we look forward to continuing to share those results with you and update on the progress. Do we have time for questions? So, unfortunately, no time for questions, but I will be around afterwards if anyone has questions about the data and the outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we do thank our evaluation team. They work really hard for us, and they are very patient with us because, of course, every time we see data, we only come up with another 30, 40, 50 questions, right, to try to help us understand, well, why is that? How did that happen? And so we are working on some pretty deep dive profiles at the moment. We really wanted to pull apart those kids that really respond well versus those kids that don't really respond well, and try to figure out try to really dig into there to understand what is it that's working, what is it that may not be working, so that we can continually do quality improvement. We tweak, change, improve all the time. We think we have done a wonderful job in our journey. I would congratulate all of you, because what this data says to me is that the community is a very viable place for long-term treatment. We can serve these kids safely in their community. We don't need them to send them out to be served by someone else. We are quite competent. And so to me, that's incredibly encouraging. The other thing that I wanted to leave you with, but I will finish after I do something. Those that are participating in the presentation, if you would please stand up and take your positions on the exterior. We do have a special treat. We have many people who have been touched or are touching in the system of care who are going to share their personal perspectives. The other piece that I just wanted to point out around that data that's really important and a little bit profound is the caregiver strain. What we have been able to show is that if we can decrease the caregiver strain, we get improved outcomes. What's really challenging is that supporting parents is where the dollars are least available. So we need to continue to collect our voices and to communicate those voices forward, because what we have found, and this data shows, when we are able to support parents and those family members so that they can effectively support their youth, we do get the better outcomes. And so just wanted to leave you with that. All right, I think we're almost ready. Not quite ready. Keep talking. So in your packet, one of the things that I did want to draw your attention back to is there's a half-page foldover. Quarterly, we put out a brief outcomes or measures on those key indicators that we are all collectively watching. School performance, recidivism, are families satisfied with their services? We also, in the inside, try to illuminate that hard data with an actual story. You have our most recent in your folder, and so please take a look at that. And then as you leave at the back table, we have some resources available for you. So if you want some more information about the work that you're all doing, grab it back there. There's also copies of the very full data report. You can also find it on the website, and you'll see our website, and I'm sure the multiple materials that you have in the folder. You can always look at that website for multiple reports from previous years, previous quarters, and that type of thing. But we did make some, maybe 50 copies. They're in the back, so help yourself if you are still a fan of paper like myself. I really don't have any more air to fill. So I will sit, and I'm sure Tina will get us started here in just a quick moment. As soon as they conclude, then Scott Gilman, our Executive Director at Network 180, is going to make some closing remarks, and then we will have concluded for the morning. So thank you again for your time and for coming out to hear about your great work, and congratulations. Job done well.
So what you're about to hear is a series of pretty powerful and impactful quotes that we have gathered from parents, youth, and our system partners. And I'll start. I didn't know where to turn. Most of my friends didn't understand and made me feel like I couldn't control my kid. I just wanted one person to listen.
I love when I can plug a parent into natural supports they had never even thought about. A neighbor, a pastor, a friend. If I can increase their natural supports by even one person, it can make all the difference in the world for that parent.
1 in 4 families is affected by a mental health problem. My family is one of the ones.
I feel like a burden has been lifted, like I'm not the only one working to help my child anymore.
Nearly 1 in 2 youth who are admitted into CFP are struggling with depression. I've watched my daughter go through these dark days not knowing if I could ever get the help she needed. She was one of the ones.
In any given year, only 1 in 5 children with mental disorders are identified and receive mental health services. What changes can we make in our system to make sure we're getting help to those who need it most?
At time of referral into CFP, 62% of youth have been placed in one or more out-of-home placements at some point in their lives. I wonder how things would be different if we could keep these kids feeling safe and stable in their own homes.
In the course of 1 year, taxpayers are spending $22 billion on foster care programs.
We couldn't go one day without fighting or yelling. Can I have that? I didn't think we could ever get to a place where we would have something stressful happen and we could just talk it out. My family was one of the ones.
My wrapped around coordinator made me feel like we were all part of one team instead of each of us fighting over our own needs.
1 in 5 youth involved in juvenile justice facilities have a serious emotional disturbance, and most have a mental health disorder.
After 1 year of CFP, youth that has been taken into police custody has decreased by 10%.
As a wraparound coordinator, I've seen families get stuck in the middle of so many services, and they weren't really connecting to any of them. I thought if they could have just one person in the midst of all of this that they knew was on their side, maybe that would make a difference. I try to be that one for them.
I had a mom recently tell me that her PSP was the one person at the table who really got her.
It really helps me to ask the parents what has worked and what hasn't worked before and why. I do this because I realize that they are the one person in the room who gets their child the best.
Okay. I'm scared. My wraparound coordinator was the one person that served more. Wait. Okay, let me re-say this. Okay, my name is Ashley, okay? But my wraparound coordinator was the one person that got service moving with my family. Yeah.
After 1 year of CFP services, suicide attempts decreased by 19%.
States spend $1 billion annually on medical costs associated with attempted and completed suicides by youth up to 20 years of age. How could we better spend money and save lives at the same time?
One in 5 youth have some type of mental health problem in a given year. Come on, Zach.
I can try.
Okay, you try.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm 1 of 5.
Good job.
Hi, I am one CLS worker.
1 in 2 students age 14 and older who are living with a mental illness drop out of high school. This is the highest dropout rate of any disability group.
If the same ones who dropped out of school had graduated, the nation's economy would have benefited from the estimated additional $329 billion over their lifetime.
After 1 year of services, 89% of caregivers said they would recommend the system of care approach to others.
Being one of the ones can be a really lonely place until you realize that you're one of the many. Trying to be one of the ones making a difference can seem impossible until you realize that you're one of the many too. Things can change dramatically as a result of just one person, one conversation, one decision, one policy change, one day, one team, one plan, one percentage, one smile, one phone call, one word, because 1 added to 1 equals 2, and 3, and 4, and 100. And there lies the power of 1. Thank you. Well, we all have witnessed that one person. As all of our youth grab a seat, I'm going to just make a few words here. That one person, as we've just witnessed, can really make a difference in the lives of others. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of the ones. One of the ones that I've been very privileged to get to know over the last year and a half, that I call my friend. Somebody that I would feel comfortable calling at 3 o'clock in the morning and telling I have a problem that I need help with. And there's many people that I know sitting in this room feel the same way. Her friends and her coworkers and her family that she worked with would like me to share a few words with you. She's an unnatural leader. She leads by example from the inside out. She's not top down. She asks hard questions. She plants seeds in order to get people thinking and explains options. She's not motivated by personal gain. She's not motivated by her own ego. She does whatever it takes. She gives credit where credit is due. She is open-minded, knowledgeable, authentic, resourceful, assumes the best, is honest, speaks up, knows her limitations, asks for help, lets people know where they stand, and self-discloses when it's not for the person's benefit and not for where it is for the person's benefit and not for her own. She is fair and admits mistakes, is a good networker, and accepts people where they are and where they're at. And she has a good heart. She helps people learn from each other and capitalize on their strengths, whether she's in the role of captain, board member, Mistress Willow, in her son's micro business in the Society of Creative Anachronism. She is able to rally the troops by helping people see the unique role they can play. She doesn't hesitate to state her opinions, but she's also quick to apologize if she's jumped to the wrong decisions. I most respect her courage and her integrity. She's an independent thinker. Again, these are what her family and friends and peers have said about her. She is fearless and deeply invested in her community, which has never been more important. She helps individuals discover and capitalize on their strengths and differences and work together to create win-win solutions in the interest of all. The irony of this is that she understates that the power of one is multiplied indefinitely when we all applied to a team. She has a phenomenal way of seeking out allies and working with partners to make seemingly small changes towards an amazing shift in how we talk to, treat, and work with families. Jane Johnson, on behalf of Network 180, I would like to recognize you with the Power of One Award, and I believe that is right here. Could you please join me? Would you like to say a few words?
It is a surprise, and y'all are stinkers. I am speechless for once in my life. I want to thank everyone who nominated me for this role. I really appreciate it. I am who I am on behalf of my mother, who really taught us the value of we don't live in a silo by ourselves, and what we do affects other people. And when you have a voice, you need to use it in a positive way. So, thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our program for today. I want to thank you all for coming, and please don't forget to visit the CFP table in the back on your way out to pick up any additional material that you may wish to take with you. Thank you.